Go ahead and go. That's my phone talking to me. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. I do see that there are more people that are joining, but we're going to go ahead and get started with a real important conversation and something that we're excited to be able to bring to you from your friends at Associated Luxury Hotels. As many of you know, we have committed ourselves to ECPAT and the code, and that is a commitment to continue to train and educate around what I think is one of the travesties in our world today that is so not well known to many of us in the general public. And, it is the equivalent of modern day slavery. But the human trafficking issue and the issue that we have around the world is something that we have taken upon ourselves to say, how do we mobilize the hospitality community that could be such large players and really having a large impact in this very serious problem that we see. More importantly, the reason we're doing this today, the United Nations has designated this as the World Day Against Trafficking, human trafficking, and it is a full awareness day. And what I'm excited about is I know AHLA was doing something probably about an hour and a half ago. Many of our industry organizations are doing something today. Those of us that are committed to this effort are all doing something, and that's how you start to really create a movement. And it's more and more people saying the same thing, doing the same things, so that it doesn't get lost in the noise. And I am thrilled to introduce Ashley Klass, who was gracious enough to join us and bless us with her time and her experience. And, to be fully transparent, and everybody that knows me knows I am, she was brought to me by my daughter, because my daughter introduced me to her when I said, this is what I'm looking to do. My daughter took some time and said, I think Ashley would be perfect because of what Ashley does. And some of the training that she does in her personal, professional life, we thought would be very advantageous for you to learn and hear about. So I appreciate it. I can tell you nobody is more excited that we've taken on this effort than my daughter, who does social work and has been very passionate about these discussions, literally over the last few years with me as well. So with that, I want to take a minute and have Ashley introduce herself. And I learned a lot just learning about Ashley and what she does, and did not even know this kind of work goes on, and that there are disciplines and professionals like you, Ashley, that are really doing this and teaching and educating within your own community. But I'm going to turn it over to you right now and let you introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about what you do.
Well, thank you, Mike. Like I said, it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be a part of such a great initiative. And truth be told, I wasn't aware that I had counterparts in the hospitality industry. So making and building bonds and bridges like this, I think, is only going to make us stronger in combating this thing overall, human to human. So I'm excited. To answer your question about my background, I'm a registered nurse. I specialize in emergency medicine, but also in forensic nursing, which encompasses sexual assault nursing, which underneath that is sex trafficking and human trafficking. I'm also a legal nurse consultant, and I deal a lot with intimate partner violence and things like that. And unfortunately, a lot of these issues kind of intertwine on some level. So I just have a weird hybrid background that kind of led me to where I am today.
Well, I know there is in your life, because of your experience, you actually, and this is what Brianna had shared with me, you actually do training for your local police departments and such, and I know you train others as well. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think, and you probably find this every time you talk to somebody, people are surprised. Yes. People do not understand how pervasive this issue is, and what I think probably surprises most is it's happening in your own backyard.
Yep.
And you don't even know that. But can you talk a little bit to that?
Absolutely. So, it's approximately 25 million people worldwide. It's a common misconception that it's not a huge problem in the US. However, it is. We're one of the worst countries for it. In 2020, there was an estimated 200,000 incidents reported. So how many more go unreported, as you can imagine? So as far as training local police departments, they have their own special task forces and things like that, depending on what area you're in. But my focus, when I've been invited, much how you invited me today, It's just by happenstance that local police agencies hear about me, and basically I just speak with anyone who wants to listen, from patrol officer all the way up. I've had lieutenants and captains and chiefs join the conversation, and it's kind of the same information I'm going to hopefully pass along to you guys today, just what to look for, how to respond, and then agencies, federal agencies that can help, nonprofits that can help, the hotlines and things like that, and just kind of light a fire for people so that maybe they take a more active interest. And then next thing I know, this patrolman is promoted to, lieutenant in human trafficking section. He didn't know he had an interest. That's what I'm hoping for, is just to educate and inspire people who are in the right position to do the right thing.
I think that is so admirable, and you're right, because the more we talk to people, the more we start to talk to people. And I was sharing with everybody, about my team this morning, something so simple as, we wear we have these pins made that we did. ECPAT had a day in February that was recognizing this issue, and they have an End It Now, and it's really for social media for their campaign. But we had it made into these pins, and they're just pins with a big X that say "End It Now." But what really fascinates me, and I was at a program over the weekend, and is to have a president of a large corporation come in, kind of zone into my my little button, tap it, and say, "What's that?"
Yes.
And I'm like, "I'm glad you asked." And I say that because this gives me the opportunity to talk about it without me having to wear a billboard, because people will consistently ask me, "What is that?" Because it does stand out. You see an X, you can't really read it, and I want them to ask the question, and then it allows me to talk about it. And you always see the same shock and surprise, that they don't understand that it's so prevalent. There's also this, how can I get involved? And that's what's exciting to me, is that from human nature perspective, we all want to help. And and that was the purpose of today, because you said this a minute ago. We all travel a lot. So any of our audience here and in the hospitality community, we are probably one of the best sets of eyes that you're going to find, because we're always traveling and we're always in hotels. And can we start there? Because I think most people, unless I'm incorrect, a lot of these instances, a lot of the marketing, a lot of the activity take place in hotels, and people don't understand that. So for people that are traveling, what should they be looking for? How can they help?
Yeah, so from a traveler's perspective versus from like a hotel owner operator perspective, right? All of us travel. So it is, common in the bigger cities and the bigger states, California, Texas, Florida. But the worst per capita rate is Nevada, probably because of Las Vegas, right? There are illicit massage parlors, spa businesses, and pornography. Those seem to be the two biggest industries that kind of allow for this opportunistic movement. So the hotels provide kind of a lot of anonymity if they're paying with cash, and a way to kind of move about and set up shop without really being noticed, unless someone's taking notice, right? Because there are actually obvious signs if you're taking a good look. If the person, you're noticing the person or group in front of you, they're paying for the room in cash or a prepaid card. The room is requested with a view of the parking lot. The room has heavy foot traffic kind of in and out, coming and going, especially at odd hours. Now, I guess I should preface this with it, as if, even if it's kind of similar to a disease process. One sign or symptom does not a disease make, right? So one of these, or one or two of these little kind of snippets, does not an incident make, does not a trafficking situation make. It's the constellation of signs, right? That, and combined with your intuition and kind of know-how, that helps you understand a situation like this. So if you just notice the person in front of you paid with cash, that alone shouldn't, cause an alarm, right? So it might raise your suspicion slightly, and then maybe if you happen to notice other things as you go on about your day, perhaps something more will start to unfold. But I just want to say, one of these signs, even two or three of these signs, does not a situation make, okay? And you've got to use judgment with that. Another thing is they're frequently requesting like linens and towels, like more often than they should be. And then there's a huge presence of alcohol, drugs, sex paraphernalia. It depends on how close the look you're getting at these people. Hopefully they're concealing themselves a little bit better than that, but you never know. That is kind of general signs, right? But if you are speaking more about like child sex trafficking, which is horrid subject matter, but it's something we're all here to discuss today, so it's something we should address. It's if the child's accompanied by a person who appears to be a very dominant figure, they're not dressed in the same type of clothing, there's usually a large age difference, okay? The child's withdrawn, they're not speaking for themselves, they don't seem to have access to a phone or an ID of their own. A lot of times the child or the victim is dressed out of season. So it could be wintertime and they're wearing a sundress and, you know, strappy sandals. That's a little bit of a red flag in any case, right? That just seems neglectful, right? So any sorts of signs of physical trauma, if, you know, they're checking in at midnight on a school night, kind of what are they doing there? You know, they're avoiding eye contact, you know, that sort of thing. It's just kind of shiftiness in a nutshell.
There's this issue with us as a society is that we're so buried into our devices
Yes.
today that we have quit looking around.
Yes.
And that is why I think this is such an important topic, that it's so important for us to be aware. It's just looking around. And yeah, my wife gives me a hard time that I am so my mother, that I am the nosiest person in the world. I am watching everybody. I am looking at people. I see things that are off. I make comments about it. And she's like, you know, you're always watching people. And I'm like, but that's not a bad thing.
No.
I'm not watching them with suspect. I'm just a curious person.
Yeah.
And I very much am wired like my mother. But I realized today what you just said. At an airport, if you were sitting there waiting for a flight, in the past, I probably would have been looking around and I would have noticed maybe some of those things being off. Today, I watch people that are sitting and looking for a flight or waiting for a flight. They're buried into their device.
Yes. Yep.
They're doing something and they're not at all looking looking around and being aware. And if there's anything that I think we can start to really push a local community about is be aware. When you're around, please take a few minutes, even if it's only a little bit of that time, to look around, look for signs, and know that that is a challenge. And I've read great stories, and I'm sure you've seen them too, of where we've had flight attendants that have rescued kids because they've picked up those signs and they know and they were trained. And that's where we always say we all have that opportunity. And nobody should be taking anything on their own. If you see something odd, go talk to the flight attendant, go talk to the airline, because they're trained for it. Same in the hotels. But I love what you're saying. And, you know, I worked in Vegas, and I will tell you, I was proud that I worked with a company, and our largest member is MGM Resorts. They were recognized for the efforts they've put around this. And, you know, your bigger hotel chains are doing that. Your bigger hotel chains are very much focused on this issue. And I'll tell you, you know, you're not going to stay in those type of properties paying cash. It's just not allowed. And the more we can do that, the more you start to squeeze out those opportunities. But I think it's really, really interesting that I'll throw something out to you that probably, I always say it's an unintended consequence from the pandemic.
Yes.
We've become so technologically advanced. We advanced the technology adoption curve. We took 5 years of adoption and crammed it in 1 year. Why does that matter? Much of the training we used to do at the front desk was what you just talked about, what to look for. If we see a dominant figure with a child, what should that look like? What signs should we be looking for? With some of our advancements into mobile check-in, mobile keys, you don't have to go to the front desk anymore.
Yeah.
We've just taken out of play one of our largest areas that we used to be able to watch for these things. So, you know, that's why we're having this conversation, Ashley, because now we need more eyes. We need more people. We need people in the hall to be watching people.
Yeah. So it is that overall instability and lack of critical service access that, you know, that's caused by the pandemic. It's happening everywhere. It's just disruptive. And it means that the number of people that are becoming vulnerable to exploitation is growing rapidly. Like I hesitate to look at the 2021 report that comes out. I have a feeling the numbers are going to be, high because of what you mentioned, and combined with the overall instability of, that the pandemic's causing.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we at ALHI have become more aggressive with making sure we're going to educate, and this becomes our platform at everything we do. Because we need to create an army of people looking and an army of people helping, and we can do that by educating, because most people want to help, they just don't know what. That is an interesting, that's interesting. There's an interesting question. What entity, I just saw it pop up, I can get back to it here. It says, what entity creates the 2021 report on human trafficking?
Yep, I have it, actually have it pulled up right in front of me. And I'm happy to send Rochelle a list of resources as soon as this conversation is over. That way you guys can bookmark that and keep up to date on it. I just looked at the 2021, not that long ago, the TIP report is what it's called. So I'll send that on to Rochelle and she can pass it around to the attendees, if that's okay.
No, that would be more than okay. And somebody just put up the Traffic Cam app, and we do recommend everybody everybody we talk to, we say, look, the simplest thing you could do if you did nothing else is download the Traffic Cam app, and please be able to document your stay at a hotel so that you can continue to add to the library that we're creating. That's a huge resource. And can you talk a little more to any other suggestions or tools for the people here? What should they be doing? Traffic Cam to me is an easy one. Any other references or points that you think that you could point them in the right direction to help?
Yeah, so there are a couple points I wanted to highlight. It's the old, if you see something, say something, right? So what I understand and I hear a lot from people is, once they recognize this problem, then they start to panic and they get stressed and they're not sure what to do next. So we can educate all we want about look for that, but then what do we actually do once that we found ourselves in that situation, and it's scary and it's stressful, and it's okay to acknowledge that it's stressful. But if you understand what you can do, then it makes it a little bit easier, and it makes you a little bit more likely to act. So if of course, if immediate safety or welfare is affected, you need to contact your hotel security, airport security, wherever you're at, as well as the local authorities if weapons are involved, or if it's a child that's in imminent danger, anything like that. Everything else goes to the wayside, and you just call 911 as you would per usual, right? If you're on an airplane or in an airport or anything like that, a good thing that you can do is record your flight number, record, your departure and your landing flight, or, landing area, right? Record the seat number. And then the other thing that you can do is look at the group and see if you can recognize any like distinctive tattoos or kind of body characteristics and things like that, so you can help identify perhaps. But never ever attempt to rescue someone. Do not do that. That puts the victim in a lot of danger. It puts you in a lot of danger, and it puts everyone around you in a lot of danger, because this isn't simply a one-man job. 99.999% of the time, they're involved in a much larger organization that's going to come crashing down upon you, probably. So it's not your area. All your job is to report to someone who has the capability to handle it properly. Okay. So besides local law enforcement, you can also call the National Sex Trafficking Hotline, which I can send along in the resource book that I'm going to send you. And people are always like, yeah, but what happens when I call that hotline? Like, what actually happens? So what happens is a live advocate will answer the phone 24/7 within the United States. Okay. If you're in another country, you have to look up the other country's local, laws, ordinances, and resources. And then they will help you address any immediate safety concerns. Basically, if you're having an immediate life-threatening emergency, hang up and call 911 sort of thing. After that, it's a case-by-case basis, but someone who is very trained and well-versed in the dynamic of this situation will help you kind of parse out what to do next. It's toll-free, it's 24/7, it's confidential, and it can also be anonymous. So if for whatever reason you want to remain anonymous, that's okay. You can still help, okay? And the only time these conversations are not confidential is if it involves the imminent danger of a child. for obvious reasons. So, you can give them a call and just say, hey, I'm sitting here in the Denver airport and something's not quite right. What should I do? And then they can guide you along the path of how to best handle that. That way, all of the guesswork is kind of removed from you and you're doing everything you possibly can.
Yeah, I love that. And as you said it, and it probably is something we have to emphasize and re-emphasize.
Mhm.
Your job is to report, not to act. And,
Yes.
and you said it perfectly. Let the trained experts do their job.
Yep.
Your job is to get the trained experts involved. And if you're in an environment, again, as I said earlier, you can definitely alert your airline
Yes.
you're flying with, in addition to, because they will alert the authorities you just talked about.
Yes.
Same in the hotel. And we had a question that came up, Ashley, and it was, what about prostitution in a hotel lobby? Is that the same as far as if we see somebody soliciting at the bar? And I would say the only thing that's the same is report it to the hotel, and make them aware that you think there is solicitation going on, and they will handle it. And there is
Yes.
nothing else for us to do but to report it at that point. So high answer is yes. It's the same in that you should report it. If you see anything suspicious, you should always report it to the hotels, and then they will take it from there and handle it appropriately.
Yep, it's definitely not your job to understand the distinction between consensual voluntary sex work and involuntary coerced human trafficking, right? So that's beyond your scope, and that's okay. So you take it to someone whose scope it does encompass.
Well, yeah, I was reading a report just last week, and I don't know if it's been widely reported because it's more localized, but the state of Texas became the first state to make solicitation a felony, and that is from the people looking to solicit prostitution. So the Johns now will actually be charged with a felony. And it is a bold step. And as I started to research more, because I moved back to Texas 2 years ago,
Mhm.
Texas has been aggressively fighting this for a long period of time, and they're kind of leading the charge. And you hope that other states will start to take it on. That we've attacked one side of the issue, but their point is if you can attack the demand side of the issue, you will start to squash part of it, if nothing
Yes.
else. So
Yeah.
that's
So
behind it anyway.
yeah, it is very unfortunate that oftentimes these sex trafficking victims, the non-consensual, right, people being solicited, let's say, they're often arrested and prosecuted, even though they've been coerced into the situation. It's a broken system in that way. A lot of times. And I think you're right. I think times are changing and agencies are starting to understand the true dynamic of the situation, but it's still happening and then these victims are forced into this cycle of, prosecution and conviction and jail, and then they're just forced into worse poverty and in a more vulnerable position, and then they get out and they have nowhere to go, and then they end up going back to where they were, falling in with someone else, and then the cycle repeats itself. They can't get out.
Yeah. Well, Ashley, as being a nurse and being able to see some of this every day, is it every day? Do you see it every day?
I mean, I don't see it every day. I'm actually in a small department now, thankfully. But being a border town, yes, we do see it a lot more than other departments would, I would say. Because my day job is in the emergency department, just doing emergency care. So we see a lot of people, coming across the border, and that's sometimes sex trafficking, it's sometimes labor trafficking. They come across with the help of a coyote, and then they're abandoned in the desert when they can't pay, or when the money doesn't come through from their family. They just get abandoned in the desert, or if they break their ankle or anything, they just get stuck. They don't get to continue, the group's not going to carry them along the rest of the way. So unfortunately, we care for a lot of patients who have been, lost in the desert for several days, who have jumped over the wall and broken ankles or backs or necks or things like that. And sometimes that's through the help of a coyote who's soliciting them for labor trafficking.
I continue to be blown away at how pervasive it is. And,
Yeah.
you know, for a lack of a better term, that the criminals continue to get smarter as we continue to put more effort against it. And, you know, you put up one roadblock and they find another way around it. And then we have to put up another roadblock and you find another way around it. And
Yeah.
that's why I remind everybody we have to be really good and very pervasive every day, because they're going to continue to find ways around what we could have done. You're getting asked if you could define a coyote for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is the exploiter. That's the person who's working for the trafficking ring, the people who are providing the workers for these illegal companies or jobs, right? They're the ones that go across to other countries, find people who are looking to come across to the United States. And then they help them do that through their illegal channels. I don't know the exact specifics on that. That's a good law enforcement question. I don't know how they help them do it, but they do. And then it's just a very ruthless process to get them over. And then they're, kind of indentured servants, or they're in debt bondage because they have to pay the fees to the person or coyote that helped them come across. And they just never get out of the debt they've accumulated.
Yeah, and I guess the easiest summation is they're smugglers, but they're human smugglers.
Yes, that's what it is.
That's exactly what you described, and I don't think people understand how what you just said. It's money that drives it, and
yeah,
going back to the root, the core of all evil comes down to that again. That it is really driven by a business, and monetary business that unfortunately is quite lucrative to many of these people. So
yeah.
it's an interesting one across the board. What other advice do you have for in their own communities?
For people in their own communities, just simply be aware. Continue to educate yourself. Understand the incidence and prevalence in your own community. Understand when when big events are coming to your community, especially if you're involved in planning or executing those events, I saw it pop up in the chat, that you're training your staff to also recognize. You're just creating your own little army, right? And you're also giving your staff the resources to be effective in helping, right? Whether that's simply the hotline or whether that's simply report to your supervisor. So you don't have you don't have to have every single waiter or waitress, understanding the final steps, right? If you have supervisors trained in furthering the conversation, then that's fine. So if all the waiter knows is, if I recognize these, tell my supervisor, then you only have to train 5 people instead of 25 people, right?
that is awesome. And again, we have those audiences. Our hotels, we're really doing a lot of training. And so if we have a meeting professional on this group, and you took your meeting to a hotel, to Ashley's point, if you trained your staff what to look for, just go talk to the hotel. Talk to anyone in management in the hotel, because they've done the training to know exactly what to do from that point on. And it's what you would look for. And when you talk about your local community, or when I ask that question, I would assume, because of what you said about things to look for, the same thing applies to a home in your neighborhood. If you're seeing traffic, that people coming in and out of the home at all different times of the day and night, and that just doesn't seem right, you should actually alert somebody.
Yes.
Those signs would be the same. That was kind of my point, right?
Great point. Yep. And the other thing is, it's a little off topic, but not really. If you're involved in sports, or your child is involved in sports, there's a lot of trafficking that goes on in the world of sports and sports management. Particularly in Thailand with the Muay Thai scene, right? In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there's a lot of it. Any sort of like the fighting arts. Soccer is a big one, where these people are being brought from their countries by sports managers, and then becoming, involved in indentured servitude to pay off the debt to get. It's the same as a coyote. They basically smuggle them in. Sometimes they'll let their visa expire so that they have more power and control over the person, and then force them to play.
Wow, that is Ashley. I had no idea. That is completely a new segment that I hadn't even considered until you mentioned that.
So if your kid is, in club soccer and there's a kid that's really out of place and they seem to be with someone who's dominant or abrasive and isn't their parent, that's also something you can look for. I actually do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and we have a lot of kids and adults that come over from Brazil to train with us. Of course, everything is, appears fine at my gym, but I was thinking about it and I was like, wow, I wonder, how prevalent this is in the US as far as sports goes. And then I started looking and I was like, I was right.
I know it's fun. If there's anything that would probably be the hardest place for me to find, because my daughters played club soccer. You just described most parents on the sideline when you talked about dominant kids, and in all seriousness, that really is hard to kind of fit through.
For sure.
Because you see a lot of that behavior on the sideline, even without it being an issue. So we would have to be more on guard, I would think.
Yep. If they came over on a scholarship, and they're without their parents and they're with some sort of chaperone situation, that might be something that could be watched a little more closely.
That is amazing. You just completely opened up another realm that I hadn't even thought about. And it goes back to being pervasive. It is pervasive in every part of our society. We have a question about any books you would recommend on the topics.
Yeah, not offhand. When I send the resource list, I'll make sure I include any books I can think of that would help.
I really appreciate it. That'll be good. And I am looking, and I think, no, I think that's it for questions right now. Our team, we have a committee that has been dedicated to this on the hotel side of it and for ALHI for some time. And they were going to throw out a few points and other resources on the industry side. And then, of course, Ashley, we're going to really look forward to your resources that we can provide to everybody. But Ashley, thank you. Thank you for joining us. They actually asked best way to contact Ashley and law enforcement for educational sessions. We can provide that in our follow-up, Ashley.
Sure.
I know you do this for a living as well, where you can go out and continue to teach and educate, and we're happy to promote you within this audience as well. That would be great.
That's fantastic. Any way I can help is, it's a treat for me.
Ashley, thank you. Seriously, what you've provided right now is, again, a little more eye-opening for many of us, and that's kind of the goal. And you said it, it's not the most comfortable thing to talk about. And I think it's why we don't talk about it more, but we're dedicated to make sure that we make people a little uncomfortable because it's an important one for us to continue to identify. So thank you for blessing us with your time. If you need to run, I know, please feel free, or you're welcome to stay on as they go through some other resources, and that'll be great too.
Awesome. I'm just going to mute and turn off my camera and watch for a little bit.
All righty. Thank you, Ashley. Really appreciate it.
It was really nice talking to you, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. And I am going to turn it over to Daniel. I believe I'll start there, and I'm going to mute as well.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Ashley, for sharing, such important insights into this topic. And the work that you're doing is just truly, truly inspiring. So thank you for that. So clearly the challenge is a large and complex one. Oftentimes, we get asked, I want to do something to have an impact. How do I get started? It can be a bit overwhelming. And especially since it is a bit of an iceberg problem, like what Ashley was talking about, there's only like 10% above the surface that we really see. But what we were reminded when we got involved, and I think it's good advice, is, this is definitely a marathon and not a sprint, but that by taking some steps forward and just having movement, no matter how big or small, that's really the key. And you'll be surprised. There's actually quite a lot of things that we can do. I noticed some people talking about traffic cam. We'll touch on that. That can have just an immediate impact. So to help organize the discussion, we see three sometimes interconnected ways to begin. And you don't need to be an expert in these, by the way, to get started. So it's share, give, and act. Sharing with social media is just very easy to do. There's a lot of great information out there. And there's a lot of information out there, depending on what area of trafficking that maybe is of a little bit more interest to you, perhaps that aligns with you. You know, there's child sex trafficking, which ALHI has taken on as our primary initiative. But there are some technology companies that use technology as their weapon against trafficking. We're curating a lot of information ourselves and posting it and sharing it on our website as a resource. But look for good resources that are updated continuously, that you can be consistent with your education, as well as with sharing on awareness campaigns and that sort of thing. And then just what we were talking about just a few moments ago, bring it up in conversation, you know, with friends, with colleagues. You'll be surprised about how much some people know, and also maybe surprised about how much of a gap there is there. But definitely the sharing can get you access to perhaps people who have a further reach than you do to really start to make a difference and make an impact. On the give side, you can always donate to food banks. There's different organizations that support victims. Consider your first responders, guys. They're the ones fighting day in and day out on the front lines. You can donate to fundraising events. Right now, if you wanted to, you could select one of these organizations as your Amazon Smile charity. We did that at ALHI in May with ECPAT USA with our team. You can purchase gifts that are created by trafficked survivors and support their businesses, maybe incorporate them into your events that you're doing. In terms of acting, it can be as simple as just spending 45 minutes a week just educating yourself on different articles. Some planners I know have incorporated clauses in their contracts that address trafficking. Some folks like to take more of a prevention approach. They work with by helping stabilize at-risk children by volunteering with youth groups, whether it's in a mentorship role, supporting single-parent programs. Look at your state. Look at what your governor and attorney generals are doing. Maybe there's something there that you can get involved locally within your community. So at ALHI, we're adopting the same mindset of share, give, and act, and applying it in our arena. We're focusing on our industry because that's what we know, and that's the space that we're in. We're in a unique position with our clients as well as with our hotel partners to have an impact. And frankly, we just believe that we're stewards to our industry, and as beneficiaries, we really have a responsibility to get involved. And our emphasis is on child sex trafficking because, frankly, no one needs to be robbed of their childhood. It's that simple. So on the next few slides, we're going to just highlight a few initiatives that we're doing. We hope that it inspires you to engage with us and to hopefully take action together. Slide.
Sorry, I needed to find the unmute. Two aspects that ALHI is really working closely with are ECPAT and the code. For ECPAT, that is, as you can see, the leading anti-trafficking policy organization, and they are focused on ending child exploitation globally. That started out as a domestic program, but it has expanded. It is really, really big now. That one is advocating for federal and state policy and legislation that prevent exploitation, specifically protecting children and guaranteeing that any child who is subjected to sex trafficking or exploitation will not be prosecuted in the courts for prostitution. That's a big one. Not victim blaming in that aspect. It also promotes corporate responsibility among private companies with strong focus on the tourism sector, which obviously is really important for us at ALHI. They're educating first responders and obviously ordinary citizens as well about the issue so that they can identify victims and join us in the fight to better protect our children. And then we're also working with them to empower youth and take the lead against human trafficking by equipping them with the knowledge and tools necessary to help them become activists against this terrible trade. And then ALHI also signed the code. So the code is specific to travel and tourism industry. So they are also providing awareness. And there are 6 criteria of the code. We're going to send that out when we send out the resources, but kind of in a nutshell, the expectation is for when you sign the code that you establish a policy and a procedure against the sexual exploitation of children. And then training your employees in the awareness and the prevention of sexual exploitation of children. You need to start including clauses in your contracts stating the value of the zero tolerance policy. There's also reporting that you need to do annually, and supporting, collaborating with stakeholders. So that's kind of ECPAT and the code in a nutshell. Next slide.
Hi everyone, I'm Divya in Austin, and I'm just going to preface this by saying that I am no Mr. Mike Dominguez, and I am nervous, and you might hear some shakiness in my voice, but that is okay. As we touched on in the chat, thank you, Sandy, and I think Jill brought it up, Trafficking. As Daniel mentioned, we want to give, share, and act, and one of the easiest ways for us to act is by the use of Trafficking. It is simply an app that you will download on your phone, upload hotel pictures, and they're going to go to a law enforcement database, and you will remain anonymous throughout the entire thing. If you look at the quote that's on the slide, it's written by the the Exchange Initiative, who are the people that developed the app. It says, our pivotal moment for developing Trafficking came when we couldn't identify a motel room. We connected the Vice Squad with our associates in that city, but it took 3 days to find the girl. That seemed way too long given today's technology. Think about that for a minute. 3 whole days. What can you do in 3 days? Daniel mentioned yesterday, goodness, you can drive from coast to coast in 3 days. It's a long weekend. They're absolutely right. That's just too long. So if we can step in and really just download an app, upload pictures, how many pictures do we take of our puppies every day? It's so simple. To help the situation, we should do it. Sex traffickers often post photos of their victims in hotel rooms to promote their online ads. So what law enforcement agents do is take these ads, match them up with the photos that you've uploaded onto Trafficking, and then use that to find victims as well as prosecute these perpetrators. So whether you have an Android or an iPhone, please download this app. So I think somebody mentioned, take it to your hotel room and do it before you move in so that it's nice and crisp and clear, and of the bathroom too. Upload the pictures and you're done. You can do this every time you travel, whether it's leisure, business, anything. It's such an easy step and we can all do it. And in case you're in Europe, Trafficking won't work, but you have an app called Stop the Traffic, which is the equivalent. At the end of this presentation, the lovely Rochelle is going to be sending out some resources, and you're going to have a one-page document on how to download and use this app. If you still have questions, feel free to write us back and we'll try to get you all the answers we can. Next slide.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aretha Kelly, and I am out of the Mid-Atlantic office here in the DC area. And I'm just going to touch on a few things that we are doing as a company to build awareness internally. First, HR dedicates a section of our weekly internal newsletter to include webinars, links, resources on the issue. It's about consistency so we can stay on top of mind. Divya just touched a little bit about the Trafficking app. ALHI has taken on that as a core initiative, making sure that when the team travels, that they are using the Trafficking Act while attending company meetings, conferences, conventions, site inspections, being sure to communicate in advance with our hotel partners and uploading pics into the app. And as you all know, Mike leads a weekly call. He utilizes these platforms to bring speakers about the issue. He uses these platforms to build awareness and to remind everyone of this topic. We are also encouraging our team to take self-training videos. And what this is doing is we're hoping to get a 100% compliance from our team. A lot of organizations provide free self-training, but we utilize ECPAT. And if you're wondering what this map represents, it's highlighted in green where ECPAT has a presence. And last, what I'm going to touch on is how we're building awareness of ECPAT and the code. We're doing this through our presentations and working with we're working with and encouraging our hotel partners to include verbiage in their contracts stating their zero tolerance policy of sexual exploitation. In many instances, our customers, our clients, partners are so engaged, they're often sharing ideas with us, and we're able to share it with the team. In turn, it creates more engagement and ambassadors for the cause. Thus, the support grows bigger in numbers and a greater impact. Next slide.
I need to find unmute too. I'm hosting the thing and I forgot where mute was. Thank you, Aretha. As you know, as we've mentioned, ALHI strives to share, give, and act in numerous ways throughout the industry for this important cause. And so in doing so, we really want to position ourselves as a resource for all of you. And a wonderful first step to get involved and to continue to stay in the know is alhi.com. You know, obviously, in addition to being a resource for all of our partner hotels and resorts, we do have a dedicated page with articles and blog posts and all sorts of content that is curated around this topic. And it will be linked in this presentation that we'll send out to you. So definitely check that out just for more information on the topic. If you haven't seen or heard it yet, we do host the Beyond the Meeting Room podcast. With numerous episodes that have been released already, with Mike Dominguez running through interviews with, you know, runs the full gamut of topics and, you know, interviewees that he has on. The latest one that we just released is actually with Lori Cohen, who is the CEO of ECPAT, the organization that we've discussed today. So if you thought that today's conversation was thought-provoking and informative, we would totally welcome you to click the link in this presentation and access that podcast as well, because you will definitely find it moving as well. As Mike alluded to earlier today, the End It movement is another movement that takes place February of every year. And so this has a lot of celebrity endorsement, a huge footprint on social media. And so ALHI strives to be involved each year in that event and to incorporate it into our in-person events. And so as Mike mentioned, we did have these buttons created. And before we even created those buttons, you can access the End It movement website directly. And purchase buttons from them. You don't have to go through the process to create them yourselves. And that's a way that you can then give back to that organization as well. And then last, but certainly not least, if you do not receive our ALHI Insider newsletter, I recommend that you sign up for it. It's a bi-weekly resource of, a ton of information, including certainly articles related to human trafficking. The latest issue that came out just last week, links to information regarding the United Nations Day, the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons, which is today. So without further ado, thank you.
So as we close today, we want to thank you for your time on a Friday afternoon going into a weekend. We hope that we, as Ashley started the call with us today, I thought she said something great. To educate and inspire is doing the right thing. And that's what we're here to do as human beings, as this committee with our great company called ALHI. We hope that we inspired you to think and just to do the right thing. And the three kind of points that we've mentioned is to share, give, and act. And we hope that we've done that with you today. Again, we will be sharing all of this content with you. It has been recorded. The resources will be given to you. And we want you to share this. So if you know someone that is passionate about this topic and we can include them, please go ahead and forward that information. And we thank you for your time today. Thank you. Mike?
Guys, to everyone on the committee, thank you for your passion and commitment to this. And your enthusiasm literally is inspiring. And I know you're as committed to this and passionate as I am. And this is important. So thank you for the important work today. Thank you for making people aware. Ashley, once again, thank you for joining us. And for everyone here, please spread the word. As Jennifer Schaefer just said, you can share this recording. You'll get the access to it. Please continue to share the message and help us build an army that continues to look and fight against human trafficking. Thank you for joining us on a Friday. Hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. And as always, thank you for your support of ALHI. Everybody have a great one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.